Everything you know about politics is wrong. What if the real victims of our broken political system are the politicians themselves? I'm a lawyer, I'm a software engineer, and I'm a product manager. I'm also a doctoral researcher at the University of Cape Town, focused on intra-African integration. In this video, I'm going to completely flip your understanding of the Nigerian politics on its head. I'll challenge the emotional narratives we've all accepted and instead approach our political system like a product manager would approach a failing product, by identifying the actual systemic failures, not just blaming the users. Why am I making this video? Most people automatically say, politics is a dirty game, and I advise you to stay away. Then later, these people spend hours complaining about politicians ruining everything while feeling totally powerless. Psychologists have called this term learned helplessness. They believe that the situation is so hopeless that there is no point trying to change it. But what if this entire framework is backwards? What if the politicians we blame are actually trapped in a system that forces certain behaviors? Imagine you're playing a game where the rules force you to make moves that hurt other players. You know these moves are harmful, but if you don't make them, you're eliminated from the game. Are you the villain in this scenario, or are you a victim of the game's design? That's Nigerian politics for you. Let me ask you something provocative. Have you ever considered that politicians might be victims of our political system rather than its beneficiaries? I know this sounds counterintuitive. We're used to seeing politicians as powerful people who exploit the system for political gain. But what if they are actually trapped? Think about it this way. Leaders train extensively for elections. This is an incredibly difficult skill that deserves respect. They become expert at winning votes through whatever means the system incentivizes. But winning elections and governing effectively are two entirely different skill sets. Once elected, these politicians face impossible expectations. They need to show immediate, visible results to secure re-election. They are trapped between short-term political survival and long-term governance needs. The system forces them to prioritize appearance over substance, personal loyalty over competence, and immediate wins over lasting solutions. For example, consider infrastructure development. A governor might understand that using public-private partnerships will deliver better results for citizens in the long run. But if they use PPP, they may not get credit for the results. There is no political incentive for efficient governance. The incentive is for visible governance. So they are pushed towards flashy, often inefficient projects that can be completed within a single term. If you think of it this way, you might actually feel sorry for politicians. They are victims of a system that traps them, unable to deliver meaningful results, but unable to change course without committing political suicide. Imagine a fish swimming in a polluted tank. We blame the fish for looking sick, but it's the water that is the problem. Politicians swim in a system designed for certain outcomes. Change the system, in this case the water, and you change the behavior of everyone swimming in it. To truly understand what's happening, we need to apply first principles thinking, a problem-solving approach where we break issues down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there. I'm sure you've heard of it before. Let's look at it like this. First principles thinking means asking, what do we know for certain? What assumptions are we making? How can we break this down to its most basic elements? Let's apply this to our political system, shall we? What is the fundamental purpose of government? This question is harder than it seems. Stop the video, ask someone nearby what they think the purpose of our government is. I'll wait. Was the answer clear and immediate? Probably not. And that's a massive problem. Where purpose is unknown, abuse is inevitable. Our political system lacks a clearly defined purpose that citizens universally understand and can hold their representatives accountable to. What is the actual system that produces our political outcomes? Our political system wasn't designed from first principles for Nigeria's specific context. It was inherited and adopted from colonial structures, and then further modified through different decades of political necessity. The resulting system incentivizes short-term visible wins over long-term development, personal loyalty networks over institutional strength, resource distribution over resource creation, appearance of action over effective action. Politicians who don't adapt to these incentives simply don't survive in the system. Those who do adapt and become part of the problem, not because they are inherently corrupt, but because the system rewards certain behaviors and punishes others. Let me ask you something. If your job evaluation and salary were based solely on how many emails you send, regardless of the quality or effectiveness, what would you focus on? Sending lots of emails, right? Even if you know that's not the best way to do your job. That's what exactly politicians are facing, being evaluated on metrics that don't align with effective governance. Now, let's look at this from a system perspective. If we look at Nigerian politics as a system rather than a collection of individual failures, it's going to help us. To enter Nigerian problem, let's start with the entry problem. To enter Nigerian politics, candidates need substantial resources. This immediately filters for those who either have personal wealth or access to patronage networks. The system selects for certain types of people before a certain vote is cast. The retention problem. Once in office, political survival depends on satisfying multiple constituencies, that is, political godfathers, party structures, wealthy donors, and only then the actual voters. Each of these stakeholders has different, often conflicting demands. Satisfying all of them simultaneously is practically impossible. Now let's go to the incentive problem. Politicians who attempt to change the system face overwhelming resistance from those benefiting from the status quo. The system has very, very powerful antibodies against reform. Those who persist often find themselves isolated, ineffective, or removed from office. Given these systematic constraints, the rational behavior for a politician is to play by the existing rules while perhaps making incremental improvements where possible. The tragedy is that even well-intentioned politicians get caught in this trap. This isn't to excuse harmful actions by politicians. It is to understand that focusing on blaming individuals without addressing the system guarantees that we'll keep repeating the same patterns indefinitely. We've all seen our heroes in civil society, I'm not going to name names, who've gotten into governance and they've become even worse than the people they were fighting before. It's gone on for decades. We have lists of these people. We know them. That being said, we need to reframe our relationship with politics. If politicians are victims of the system rather than its masters, this completely changes how we should approach political change. Instead of the naive view that we should just find good people and get them into office, we need to recognize that the system shapes people's behavior more than individual character shapes the system. This means severe, crucial shifts in how we think about politics. From blaming individuals to redesigning incentives. What would our political system look like if it rewarded long-term thinking and effective governance? From emotional reactions to systemic analysis. What specific mechanisms in our current system produce the outcomes we dislike? From powerlessness to targeted engagement. Where are the leverage points where citizens can effectively push for systemic change? The truth is that our political class isn't separate from us. They are responding to the incentives we have collectively established. If we want different behavior, we need to change the incentives. This is both good news and bad news. Bad news because there is no quick fix of just electing the right people. Good news because systemic change, while difficult, creates lasting transformation rather than temporary relief. I'll leave it here for now. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Does viewing politicians as victims of a broken system change how we think about politics? What specific system changes do you think would create better incentives? In my next video, I'll go deeper into specific system redesigns that could transform Nigerian politics from first principles and things we can do without actually changing the constitution. If you found this perspective valuable, subscribe and hit the notification bell to join me on this journey of reimagining Nigerian politics from the ground up. This isn't about making excuses for bad leadership, it's about truly understanding the problem so that we can create effective solutions. Remember, The most dangerous thing about our political system isn't that it's broken, it's that we've accepted that brokenness is inevitable. It's not. And in the next video, we'll continue this conversation. Thank you.